Very interesting. The flood of comments that have just gone up about promoting RT. I was on RT. I feel I'm in a very good position to talk about it. I was interviewed on RT at least once that I recall, and I was also on a number of Russian television programs, and on the Russian TV programs, I caught them dubbing fake information into over what I was saying, and on RT. One of the things that happens if you're invited onto a television program as so to do a live comment, a live interview, is you are generally left on hold for a good 10 minutes listening to the program as it's going out. And so I was listening to the previous articles that were being pumped out, and they were fundamentally wrong. So when I was asked, when I was on air and I was live and I was being asked questions, I'm afraid I found it impossible not to refer to the previous section and to point out that a lot of the information that was being peddled was simply false. Of course, I was never invited back, but I had the opportunity of seeing what RT was like at first hand, in the same way as I saw what NTV was like at first hand in Moscow. And yes, sometimes it's taken me a little while to realize exactly what the problem is, to put my finger on what the problem is. In the case of the Russian state media TV system and their use of dubbing and their use of AI and so on, which is now routine, I think I was an early test subject because what they were dubbing over me wasn't significantly important. The fact that they weren't prepared to own up to it, they took the broadcasts off their feed afterwards, so you can't find them on the internet. But they went out live, and I saw them. Other people I know saw them, and it was clumsy of them. The dubbing was clumsy, and it was embarrassing. And I was supposed to meet the presenter. It didn't happen. I went over to the television studio. I was left in a cafe paying for my own drink for about 3 hours, and then I bundled back in a taxi back home without seeing I can't remember her name now. The name's gone anyway. She was quite an abusive presenter who flew into a torrent of swearing on an early morning TV show when some children threw a snowball at her. Is Zakharova? No, it's not Zakharova. It's somebody else. Anyway, there's plenty of documentary evidence here and there, and you can find the entire story in I think BBC Media Reports or something. If you look up Tim Wilson and dubbing in Russia, it all comes up very quickly. So I think I'm in a position to talk. Dale Crocker says it comes as no great surprise that the Prof supports censorship. It's a very lefty thing. I was a lefty myself once until I realized that I was so, because loving everybody and everything made me feel all warm and fluffy inside. Regretfully, though, feeling all warm and fluffy inside is not a great basis for reasoned thought. Hard realities must be faced. So when coming up against any opposing views which point out discrepancies and irregularities in one's argument, the reaction is often one of panic. As that nice, warm, fluffy feeling begins to fray somewhat at the edges. The obvious response is to ban the source of this discomfort so one can carry on basking in the heady glow of moral rectitude. In my view, for accuracy and disinterested analysis, RT beats shrill news stations such as CNN and BBC hands down. Even if my view is the wrong one, I bitterly resent any measures taken to prevent me having it. No, I don't promote censorship. what I promote is that an organisation like RT should not be advertised and encouraged on other media outlets like Facebook or the BBC. I certainly don't promote the banning of RT by the British government. I think we should still have access to it, and we shouldn't have to use a VPN in order to access it. But I certainly don't think that people should be exposed to it unless they are deliberately looking for it. And so you misjudge me if you think that I'm in favour of censorship. I'm not in favour of censorship, but I am in favour of giving people choice. And having RT, this channel which promotes fake news, shoved in my face is not the way I want to start my day. Really makes you think, says RT is far more reasonable than Western media. Its coverage is surprisingly balanced. Just bear in mind that this professor here thinks Putin is in a freezer and supports Ukraine making people fight against their will. First of all, I do think Putin's in a freezer. I think Putin is the modern equivalent of Schrodinger's cat. We wait until we open the Smeg door before we judge whether Putin is alive or dead. Certainly Putin has plenty of doppelgangers, and the Putins that I see are certainly not the Putin that I met years ago. And this may be a matter of age, it may be a matter of face fillers, it may be a matter of the survival of serious disease. I don't care. It makes for an entertaining story, it makes for an entertaining mug that some point or other will, I hope, appear for sale in merchandise in that little strip below the channel video. And I hope you'll buy my Putin mug. But it's do I support Ukraine making people fight against their will? Absolutely not. I don't think people are fighting against their will in Ukraine. I think there are plenty of people who are worried about being called up in Ukraine. I've spoken to some of them, and I know some people who have fled the country. But there are also many people in Ukraine who are only too eager to sign up. And now the latest batch of recruits has gone through training, and the result will soon be seen in the autumn or spring offensives. But I certainly, it's not Ukraine who is making people fight against their will. It's Russia. It's Russia that invaded Ukraine and has put people on the back foot. And I equally, I'm not a pugilist. I'm not in favor of warfare. But I am in favor of resisting aggression and standing up to bullies like Putin and like silly people who don't have proper names on their on their YouTube feeds, who operate behind the mask of some completely incomprehensible sobriquet, who don't have a lot of followers themselves, who don't have a lot of views, who seem to be trolls. You may not be trolls. You may be perfectly reasonable and and reputable individuals, but the information that you are peddling, that there is some sort of parity between Russia and Ukraine, is itself fake news. There is no equivalence. Russia or the Kremlin is bad, and Ukraine is good. It's as simple as that. We haven't been in this position since the Second World War, where there is a clear distinction between good and evil. And Putin is evil, and I wish he weren't. And I would certainly encourage him to come and have a cup of tea with me, but I would be pouring the tea. I wouldn't let him anywhere near the teapot.